so I wanna go back to my reality. Wanna go back. I wanna go back to my reality.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Spoiler Warning Podcast. This is review number 727 with a review of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. I'm Christopher Schnese.
And I'm Stephen Miller.
And if you're joining us for the first time, the Spoiler Warning Podcast is a weekly film review program. Each week on the show, we're going to dive in, debate, discuss, and argue over the latest films coming to a theater near you. We are back now for another Marvel film. We're talking about Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, you know, the kickoff to this next phase of Marvel. Let's talk a little bit about our history with the titular Ant-Man, Stephen Miller. What have you thought of the films leading up to now in this saga?
Yeah, I've enjoyed the Ant-Man saga so far. Ant-Man 1, I definitely watched that in theaters. There's a lot of joy just living in San Francisco, watching Ant-Man in theaters here, a lot of laughs of recognition. That film took place entirely in the city and has a lot of fun, you know, throwing in landmarks. But Paul Rudd is wonderfully charismatic. He's charming. He's fun to watch. And I felt like Ant-Man was really a good exercise in Marvel, showing that it could do different genres well. And in this case, it was doing kind of comedy, kind of heist. In both senses, it was different than the broader MCU feeling. It was willing to be small and funny and specific. Ant-Man and the Wasp, I feel like I watched it on a plane. So I liked it, but I don't have the same kind of like visceral memory of how into it I was. It was more just like something to do. But I remember it again feeling kind of light and trifling and exactly what I wanted from an Ant-Man movie, like a movie that is making fun of itself. So yeah, I've been a general Ant-Man fan. I've seen them as kind of the reprieve of the MCU. Like when the Infinity Saga was getting heavier and heavier, there would be an Ant-Man movie to go and remind you that you are watching a silly comic book and you don't have to take it too seriously. So overall, I've been a fan.
Yeah, I think that like kind of the only reason I've kind of been a fan of it is because of Paul Rudd. Like Paul Rudd is sort of like the in-universe grown-up version of Tom Holland's Spider-Man, right? Like Spider-Man is this like, oh shucks, isn't this awesome? I get to be in the Avengers. This is so cool. And Paul Rudd is like, what if that kid, but a grown-up adult who never quite shook that sort of like, it's one of those things too where like, as a kid, you're like, yeah, that kid is cool. And as an adult, you're like, it's kind of sad. But I still like this guy because he's just it's sort of like self-deprecating a little bit. But yeah, I think that he's sort of felt a little bit like a B tier superhero in the MCU.
For sure, Ant tier, really.
Yeah,
B
Ant-tier
comes differently.
Yeah, that's the guy he was fighting in the last movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, they've always kind of been doing some fun stuff with the character and the world, and just the idea of this guy who can shrink down to really, really small sizes and where that gets him. Next follow-up, Stephen, did you end up watching Loki on Disney Plus?
I did not. No, I did hear that Loki would have been smart preparation for this movie, but I did not do it. I was aware of the idea of Kang before. Like I had read some explainer online, but I have not seen a minute of Loki. So that second post-credit scene did absolutely nothing for me.
Gotcha. And you don't know how big Kang's deltoids are?
No, though I feel like they are smaller than Magazine Dreams' Jonathan Majors deltoids. So I think we can safely say that he didn't film this concurrently with Magazine Dreams.
Gotcha. All right. Well, yeah. Are you excited to get in and talk about this film, Stephen?
Yeah, I'm excited. I think what I am curious about before we go into the review is, what do you want out of an Ant-Man movie? Like, do you have expectations that you are looking for with something being Ant-Man? Or at this point in the MCU, is everything? And is that kind of what you expect from it?
Yeah, so I think that's kind of maybe the problem I've had for maybe the last couple of films in a way. And that is like, in the past when we were in the, low tens of Marvel films, it was kind of like, oh, everything's got to lead up to something with at least one major scene playing into this like universal thing. And that has sort of become critical mass of where these films are going. So in a world where I haven't consumed all the other stuff and I'm not waiting for where these things are going, it's kind of like it's impossible to say fall into the quantum realm and just exist there in my society of quantum realm people. It's like, yeah, but this isn't just the quantum realm. This is the kickoff of the next phase. And there have been all these things teasing these characters and where this is going to go. And it's hard to not, like, technically, when I sit down for an Ant-Man film, I have zero expectations. I just want to have fun with Scott Lang and doing stupid stuff and hopefully maybe getting into some heisting. But there is also this weight sitting on what these characters are trying to accomplish that in a way has to make sense to me. Like, especially being somebody who has watched the Disney Plus shows, it's like, with Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, we just came off a film where multiverse was pretty fucking important, and then we also came off a television show where a character was very, very important to this kind of stuff, and then to have this character act as though those other things didn't exist felt wrong, and I couldn't get into the fun like Sam Raimi of it all, because I was like, but what about all the shit you set up? It sure as hell feels like you guys should be acknowledging that now, and you don't seem to be acknowledging it properly. So it's kind of like it's impossible for me to divorce the juggernaut that is the MCU when I'm sitting down to watch any random film, unless it's something like a Thor, where I'm like, oh, I get that this is a side story of him like romping around the universe doing his own thing kind of stuff.
Yep. Yeah, makes sense. Basically, because I feel the same way. And I believe you are still an MCU completist. Have you seen Eternals and Black Widow?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I am not anymore. I have not seen either of those films or any of the Disney Plus shows. So I am really feeling the weight of context as a threat against my enjoyment of watching a movie, because at any moment it might collide with some context that I haven't been paying attention to anymore. So it's interesting watching these movies now, because there isn't always a delight of discovery. There's a hearing the audience discover a thing and me being like, damn it, I have to look that up now.
The ironic thing is that, like, for all the films this entire time, there have been a segment of the audience that they were already doing that, but it was because they read comics, right?
Right. Yeah, that's true.
And now it's like it's been so absorbed into the culture that now there's like another tier, the B tier. Good to go back to that again, where it's like, oh, now I'm also not getting the other references that are not book knowledge, but are in fact television show knowledge and that stuff. So yeah, it's just gonna, it's never gonna get better.
Nope.
Anyways, let's go ahead and get into this review. What do you say, Stephen?
Let's do it.
We're going to take a listen to the trailer for Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and then come back and give everybody a review.
You're an interesting man, Scott Lang. You're an Avenger. You have a daughter. But you've lost a lot of time, like me. We can help each other with that. Who are you? I'm the man who can give you the one thing you want. What's that? Time.
I can rewrite existence and shatter timelines. You cannot trust him.
I don't care who this guy is. I just lost so much. He can give us a second chance.
Let me make this easy for you. You will bring me what I need, or everything you call a life will end.
This is all my fault.
You may not want her to watch this.
We had a deal.
You thought you could win.
I don't have to win. We both just have to lose.
I'm sorry, Cassie.
All right, so that was the trailer for Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Basically, Ant-Man and his little happy family, who have been reunited after previous films, develop a little device that acts as a GPS to tunnel down to the quantum realm, and something tunnels back up, sucks them down there, and they have to deal with how they can possibly get home, which I think is the theme of many of the Ant-Man films. Stephen Miller, what did you think of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania?
I think the title of the movie is a good analogy for the dilemma the movie is in. First we had Ant-Man. Then we had Ant-Man and the Wasp. Now we have Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. They can never let go of anything. They can only accumulate and accumulate and accumulate. You know, we didn't call it Captain America and Iron Man and Thor and Black Widow and Hawkeye and Spider-Man and Black Panther Civil War. Like, it was just Captain America Civil War. And I think Marvel has hit a point where the weight of universe building is so big, like we talked about before the trailer, that it just crushes even the lightest movies under its weight. And that is what I felt when I was watching this. I really enjoyed the first 5 to 10 minutes of this movie. When Scott Lang is in San Francisco, he's back to his old quips. The guy from I Think You Should Leave is calling him Spider-Man by mistake. He's at City Lights bookstore and the audience is cheering. He's, being goofy and lighthearted. He's his old self. And there are things to address in this movie. The snap happened, his relationship with Cassie. He lost 5 years in the life of a teenage daughter. That's huge, right? There are things in the Scott Lang universe that would be great to talk about. But we don't get that movie. We get within, I would say, under 10 minutes, single-digit minutes, we are in the quantum realm. Or at least we are already talking about it and know that we are on our way there. And my sense of the quantum realm is it was fine. I was never unhappy watching this movie. I had a totally fine time. It is a brisk 2 hours, 4 minutes, so it's significantly shorter than other Marvel movies, but it all passed right through me. Like when I look back now and try to say what was the arc of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, I don't have one. Like, without spoiling anything, it's basically they go to the quantum realm, people are there, it's okay. like I don't feel like any character has a thing that they grapple with. Like the trailer tries to put so many things into this movie that don't exist when you actually watch it. Kang as the ultimate tempter. Kang is, the snake in the Garden of Eden or whatever, saying, I can give you the one thing you want, and characters are saying, he can rewrite existence. I don't care who this guy is. We've just lost so much. He can give us a second chance. That is not in the movie. Like, nothing is in the movie. The movie is, they go to the quantum realm. There's this whole world here of resistance fighters that we never get to learn anything about, really. Kang is there too, and a set piece occurs, and then the movie is over. It just didn't feel like a cohesive story. It felt like it had to do so much work to tee up the next phase of Marvel that it forgot to do anything satisfying with the character of Scott Lang or with his family. There are things here where it tries to be we're getting closer together, we're learning about each other, we're forgiving each other, we learn more about Michelle Pfeiffer's character, Evangeline Lilly and Paul Rudd get to have moments together, but none of it feels like it exists anywhere. It just kind of feels like things that had to happen in a script so you could feel like you were getting the end of an arc without actually experiencing the arc anywhere. I think the things the movie does well, it introduces Kang. I think it does a good job with that. Jonathan Majors is great. I might be bringing a good bit of Magazine Dreams baggage to his character already, but I feel like he has this quiet intensity. He doesn't have to be menacing because he just, he is a threat very easily, and he toys with that by being kind seeming. There are flashbacks. There's an arc with Michelle Pfeiffer where we see him being just a regular old guy, and because of context and everything else, that regular old guy is a menace, and he's very good at doing that. I think this does a decent job teeing up the threat that he will be in the universe, even though logistically I don't know if it is him or other ones of him. We can get into that later. I don't totally have closure in what was going on there. Other things the movie does well. I think when it decides to be funny, it is funny. There's a recurring joke about Bill Murray's history with Michelle Pfeiffer that I laughed multiple times when it came up. That is the movie I want to be watching more of.
Yeah.
It is the movie that has this wackiness that is pointing out the comic book absurdity and having fun with the comic book absurdity rather than taking it seriously. I'm also going to say there's a character in this movie who people have not been spoiling who it is, so I won't either, but I will say it is a comic relief character that comic book fans are aware of. I thought he was pretty funny. I was actually totally fine with him in the movie. I want to be watching the Ant-Man movie that has all of him and guy who wants holes and silly Rick and Morty-ish type things being in this universe, because that is what I go to Ant-Man for. The problem is 90% of this movie is the quantum realm. There are people and rebellions. There's this deep history that we're going to learn about. Kang is an existential threat. What are you going to do? And I think the movie just doesn't bear the weight of all that. I don't think it satisfies any of it, and it makes it feel like it wasn't even worth going. So I had a fine time in the moment with this movie, but it is maybe the most nothing Marvel movie I've seen so far, or at least it is down there in terms of the least consequential Marvel movies I've watched. So it did not make me feel great about the future of Marvel. It makes me think they are really suffocating under the weight of the million universes that they have to support connecting at the same time. But it was fine. Like all Marvel movies, I didn't hate it. I can't hate it because it's connected to other things that I like. So it forces me to be like, okay, whatever. I'll be back for more, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it really sucks too that it makes you feel that way, given this is literally the kickoff to the next phase. So it's just like it's not starting. Like, I mean, at least the bar is low. There's room to grow there, right? You gotta look out for the little guy. Yeah, so I think that the quality of this film is sort of all over the place. I think that Jonathan Majors and Michelle Pfeiffer are in their own movie, which could itself be great. I would love to watch their origin story and a film that ends with her realizing who he is and what he wants to do, and then escaping the quantum realm. I would be 100% on board with just that story. I would also be 100% on board with if Scott Lang coming out of the quantum realm during, like, right as the snap just happened. If he would have, instead of popping back out and only having been there for 20 minutes, was there for 30 years, and I just watched the Disney Plus series of him meeting new groups of Rick and Morty type characters in the quantum realm. Yeah. Each week was just a new group of the week that he can meet. That would be super awesome. I think the problem is that these two realities do not meld well together. Jonathan Majors is amazing in this film, and he's amazing. It actually makes me wonder about Creed 3, because seeing Magazine Dreams and this so close together, he is really amazing at playing powerful people who are tortured by something and are like, that they are fierce, but they also have kind of regret or shame or something about them that they fear, and that like they just play these he is playing this really, really interesting tortured character in both of these films. And in this one, we get the idea that he is sort of like a Kylo Ren type of character in this universe, but he feels bad about it. Like the evil that he has done weighs on him, and he has done it because he believes it was something that he had to do. And you see in every moment that he is on screen that it hurts him, and that he is doing this thing because he thinks that's what has to be done. And that is really, really compelling. The problem is, and this is a very Christopher thing to complain about it, but we don't ever see and really understand the box that his powers live in.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm understanding correctly, all the powerful shit he can do is just maybe his suit and not actually him. He is not a being that possesses those abilities. He just is throughout time and has created a suit that makes him just like basically Miss Marvel or something, right? Or Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
And that seems super weird because the entire film, like our introduction to him is, and the reason why I make the reference to Kylo Ren is like our introduction to Kylo Ren, right? Is Oscar Isaac's, right? Oscar Isaac? Yeah. Fires that blaster at him, and he like catches the bolt in air, and you just go, oh shit! He didn't deflect the bolt. He just stopped it in midair, and he's holding it there for this entire scene. You're like, that guy is badass, right? You're like, okay, that was a cool force power. In this, he's just fucking throwing people around with force powers, and you're like, how is anybody in this movie going to fight him? There's no reason why. And then it gets even worse. There are scenes where he's just hopping out and obliterating tens of, if not hundreds of people instantly with like hand laser beam things. And I'm like, okay, this is now to the point where he's not even just like a Thanos dude. He should be able to just wipe there is no amount of people you should be able to throw at him based on what I've just visually watched that could stop him, because he would just go brum, brum, everything's gone, right? And I think that like when you're watching a film like that, stakes go out the wazoo, whatever. No, the opposite. They go out the air. They go out the window.
Yeah, out the window.
Stakes go out the window.
Into
they also
the wazoo
go,
of someone else.
Up the wazoo, out the window, up the wazoo, and
over the big red hill.
Yeah. So it's just one of those things. Like the whole movie, I kept going like, this is kind of silly. Like how, like we know we expect that the heroes will win in the end, but it feels like they've already lost before the start of anything. So it's hard to like get on board with where it's going. Also, this character, like if you go back and watch the end of Loki and you get like this huge monologue by him and you understand this being out of time, and you're like, okay, this guy's fucking rad. He's sort of like the architect of the Matrix in a way, but with time instead of the multiple iterations of the Matrix. In this film, he talks as though he knows what will become, but I don't feel the writing really communicates a character that fully understands what he is waiting for in these situations, right? Like in theory, the moment he crash lands, he knows Michelle Pfeiffer is going to eventually figure out what he's up to and to betray him, but he's okay with that because he knows eventually the entire family of Scott Lang are gonna get sucked into the quantum realm way in the future, right? The film does not really communicate to me a character outside of time, but a character who talks about being able to go outside of time, which doesn't really meld that well for me either. And I think that this film just, it feels like I wish it would have been either more fantastical and fun and silly, or more not grounded, but like more sort of really wanting to deal with the ramifications of who this character is. What I do kind of like, honestly, I can't tell whether I like it or dislike it, but it's kind of like, if you remember like Dragon Ball Z, right? Every season there's a newer, bigger, badder boss who like nobody can possibly defeat until Goku like figures out a way to defeat him. And then the next season starts with an even bigger, badder boss showing up, right?
Right.
With what they're doing with Kang, we could kill Kang every single movie, and there's just going to be another Kang that could be formidable in a completely different way, right? Like, we get shots of potential different versions of Kang, and like it's kind of a fun idea to be like, hey, we can do anything we want, and we can kill him if we want, but it's okay because we could still have the same. It's kind of like, in a way, it's genius, and it's also sort of a cop out. But I'm interested to see what they're doing with it. But I just think that this film itself is sort of very, very muddy, and it was hard for me to accept any possible way to defeat the character that they presented to me in the first half of the film.
Yep. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think, so you mentioned Jonathan Majors, his motivation as Kang is very interesting. And I didn't watch Loki, so I have only seen the little bit that we get in this movie. But he references things when he's talking to Michelle Pfeiffer, like, I wish those things mattered. I wish the people I killed mattered. I wish any of this mattered. But he's basically like forced into like effective altruism, where he's like, compared to the weight of all this stuff, nothing else really matters. And in that way, he's like Thanos, right? Where he is a person who thinks he is doing right, and he is not taking pleasure in it. He is simply doing it. And that is compelling, and he sells it as a character. Like Thanos, though, as you said, his powers are unclear. And I think this movie, one thing it suffers from is Kang is overpowered and unclear, and Ant-Man is overpowered and unclear. Ant-Man, in every Marvel movie, there's this trick up its sleeve where he might get really big and suddenly just crush everything. And yet he doesn't for most of the movie in most of these times. In this movie, you basically just have two forces up against each other that are totally undefined. Like, when is Ant-Man punching Kang going to do anything, and when is it going to be absolutely nothing? When is Kang going to be distracted by 5 people fighting him at once, and when are 1 million people fighting him at once? No problem, because he just moves his hand and they all fall down. They don't know how to establish the stakes here. And I think that ambiguity exists for both hero and villain in a way that makes it really hard to think anything matters. I also think you mentioned the genius of Kang is they can have infinite variations of him, so they can do whatever they want with him, and the threat will be back in the next movie, the next episode. And that is both the genius and also, I think, the thing that makes Marvel be exhausting to me now is nothing matters anymore. Like, how can it matter? You're never going to get rid of the bad guy. You're never going to really kill the hero. There are multiple universes. There are multiple hacks. There are Deus Ex Machinas that can happen at any given time that stop the big bad thing from occurring. What is the grand vision that I am watching with bated breath to see unfold? Like, I just feel like they've built this hack that they can't get out of now that makes everything be weightless. And I have trouble following a movie like that.
But then again, Steven, just while you were like saying it back to me, I just realized that they did this already. It was called Ultron. Right? Because that was basically just, if Kang was robots, it was Ultron.
Yeah. No, it's true. It was the same idea. I mean, I just think they're running out of ideas, basically. I'm not seeing a lot of new stuff from Marvel, and I'm not really blaming, because the thing is, I don't think they can go bigger. I think the only new ideas they could have are to go smaller, more specific, and they can't do
what
that.
They did.
Okay, by technicality, but that's the thing. That's a nitpick. They're in the quantum realm. I remember from the first Ant-Man, the idea of the quantum realm is this terrifying thing. Like, you go there and you can't go back, and time flows differently, and you lose track of yourself, and you're too small, you're too tiny. This quantum realm just feels like the regular world again, including the same rules about when they're big, they get hungry easier, and when they're small, they have more speed and less momentum. And nothing feels shrunk down about this movie, basically.
I didn't even think about that until you just said that. When he gets big, he's actually just getting less small, because he's still smaller than normal size Scott Lang. So no matter how big he gets, unless he gets human size, it should not require any more metabolism or anything from him, because it's not, unless there's like some sort of time thing that happens where once you've stayed at one state for long enough, all of your shrunken atoms then like acclimate to that level, and now you become equalized to that size.
And speaking of time, they've established, for reasons I scientifically don't understand, that the quantum realm basically exists outside of time. I think because that is where Kang is, and he's basically been banished from time.
Yeah.
But when Scott got stuck there during the snap and then came back, wasn't it like time dilation? Like he experienced 1 minute in the quantum realm, but 5 years had passed.
So
and
no,
if
because
that is true, what did Michelle Pfeiffer experience? Because it sure seems like she had 30 years to match the 30 years on the outside.
So I believe he goes in and then exits the second the snap happens. So it's like the snap happens and then he exits. So he could have been snapped, but he wasn't in our reality at the time. So I think he is just back during that. So I think he was literally only in there for, like, I think he's in there for a little bit because the people who are about to pull him back out got snapped. So he's in there for a little bit longer than he should be. But I don't, he wasn't there long enough to live 30 years of his time. I think, I don't know if the time dilation works in both directions and reverse depending on what you're doing. I don't understand how it works. But.
Yeah, for some reason, I felt like there was a gag where he hops out and it's as if no time has occurred, but years have passed or something. But I don't know. Maybe I just hallucinated that. I truly can't even remember when the last time I saw Ant-Man was. All of these stories are blurring together now.
Yeah.
I just know that he was in and then he was out. I think what frustrates me most is like you said, Michelle Pfeiffer and Jonathan Majors are in a different movie, and they're in a really good movie potentially. Like they're selling it. And Michelle Pfeiffer has this deep history that is, I would say, revealed enough in the trailer that we can talk about it, where she was not alone for 30 years. She was living in a whole world down there. There was a movement, there were resistance fighters, there are people, there's a language, there's a custom, everything going on. And I feel like the movie introduces us to that as if it is going to be the thing that we are going to spend 2 hours exploring. And then just no one asks her any follow-up questions, and then we just never do anything else with it. I feel like they treat it very, very weirdly, more like a TV show where you're going to have, 9 more episodes later to unpack more of the details, but the movie just ends and we haven't unpacked anything.
It definitely feels a little bit though, and I think too. I think the thing that we're forgetting is that when we first start following these characters, Michelle Pfeiffer's been gone, right? Like Hank Pym's whole thing is figuring out a way to get her back. So no matter how time dilation works, like she was literally gone for all this time.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. But I think that somebody who went through this thing that was theoretically traumatic to everybody who thinks that that entire universe is just nothingness is sort of trying not to trigger her potential like PTSD or something. Like I think it's just a situation where it's like, mom's back, we don't talk about it. Like that sort of thing. So it didn't fully bother me that she wouldn't say it. Like I actually like the initial thing of like, oh, let's see what our daughter or my granddaughter made with her little science experiment. And then she's like, wait, you're signaling fuck. Like I like everything up to that. Once you're down there holding your cards so close to the vest when like literally people's lives can depend on it feels a little stupid. Like, like just tell the people what they need to know then. But it's also
and just narratively unsatisfying because I feel like there's a world where this is Avatar and we've just gone underwater and there's this whole new world that we can explore and we just spend an hour learning about the quantum realm and the rules of the quantum realm and the customs and the different types of people and creatures and all that. And we don't. If we did, I fell asleep, I guess, because I don't remember learning anything about anything. We learned drink the ooze. We learned that you can drink the other slimy tentacled things in the drink, and I think that's mostly it. Holes. And to me, it kind of culminates, again, I would give a spoiler warning, but I think this is too bland and vague to spoil. There's a moment toward the end of the movie where Cassie gives an impassioned speech. It's basically a Rise of Skywalker moment, of like rallying the troops. And I have never felt less in any of these movies in my entire life than watching Cassie give a rousing speech to a group of people we've not been told to care about, for reasons we've not been told, to do a thing that we don't care about, to upend a history that we don't know anything about.
Yeah.
Like, it just feels like the movie shorthands its way through the whole thing, and that is just, I don't know, it just feels like a wasted opportunity.
Yeah. And that's the thing, too, is we don't know where all these various groups of people are. They also people who in their own times and worlds got banished to the quantum realm as well? Did they all discover the quantum realm, end up there, and then they've been like procreating in the quantum realm and creating entire societies of people? I do like the idea, though, of like Kang being out of time, going like, okay, I know I'm going to get out of here in 30 years. Maybe I'll just start building a bunch of shit for 30 years so that when I finally get out, I can take all of that. It's like imagine if a guy knew that he was going to be able to get out of his like space prison and he could build like all the ships from Independence Day, right? It's like, why would you not build a conquering force to go do this thing? Like, it's you literally all you have is time, and you know that you can do it. And so like I love those ideas. Like, they are cool. I just don't understand. Also, his suit seems pretty powerful. Do you really need Ant-Man to change the size of your warp core?
Yeah. Speaking of Ant-Man, I really thought the one Ant-Man, Peyton Reed, jokey type thing they were going to do in this movie, I kept waiting for it, is there was a fan theory, you probably recall, about how the Avengers could defeat Thanos. It was a fan theory back during Infinity War, that Ant-Man could get really small,
Go somewhere.
go into one of the holes. I'm not going to say which one, but Thanos also has 7, I believe, and then get really big, and that would be a viable way to kill him. There were multiple times in this movie where they could have used that joke to have him do a KO of some sort, and they never did it, and it just disappointed me, because I felt like this would be the perfect time to do the little bit of fan service or comment on the commentary or whatever, and they didn't do it. I think because they could have done the other thing too, where, like, I remember Infinity War feeling like a sudden, all of these jokey, quippy, Joss Whedon-y characters are hitting this brick wall of shit. People are dying. Things are hopeless. What are we going to do? Like, running into a darkness that they aren't used to. And this could have been that, right? If Jonathan Majors and Michelle Pfeiffer are in a dark, serious movie, you could have it where Scott Lang is jokey and quippy and being his usual self for the first hour of the movie, and then he runs into this force that is so dark and terrifying he can't escape it. And that could be the way the movie feels, but it doesn't. It just feels like they're trying to glue the tones together and play both sides at the same time, and to me that just doesn't satisfy either.
Yeah, and I think too that what this film, like, on that same note, is what this film is missing is Kang needs Lang to get his thing. There isn't a world in which Lang doesn't think that Kang could possibly be bad, right? Like, he knows from the beginning. It would be a more interesting world if Scott was actually tempted, like you said, the trailer sort of makes it out to be, where he's like, hey, I'm going to do this thing for this guy. I have no idea what the consequences are for it. And then he is fighting like Michelle Pfeiffer or something because she knows how it is. He's like, no, he's going to give me my 5 years I lost with Cassie. I need to do this. But this film, like, either that was completely edited out or somebody edited together a trailer to make it seem like that was what the story was going to be. But, like, if there was some sort of thing where, like, Ant-Man doesn't know whether what he's doing is a bad guy thing or just helping somebody out who can help him out. Like if it's a mutual, hey, we're all stuck here, the way that Michelle Pfeiffer was first there, right? Imagine if they get separated. It's been a while. He shows up with this guy. He's like, hey, my ship crashed. That's my warp core. Could you help me get it? You seem to have a suit with powers. And then he was going to do it. And it's not until after he gets it that he realizes, no, don't give him the time stone. You know what I mean? Like we're missing that from the story. And it's like, he knows the guy's super evil. The guy's basically like, yo, I'm going to kill your daughter and make you watch it over and over for all eternity. If you don't do this thing for me. There's no conflict there other than like, hey, I got to do this thing because I don't want to see that really, really bad thing that he just said. But
like I think I want Kang to be more like Halbrand in Rings of Power or something. I want him to be the soothsayer who tricks people into doing his will, and then at the end of the movie is revealed to be the big bad.
At the end of the movie, just fucks off to his own
exactly
his own mountain.
That's what I want. But damn, does he look good doing it?
Oh yes, I have had many names. Anything else to chat about on this film, Stephen?
No, I think in general, if I look back on phase 4, is that the phase we were in? Phase 5? I don't even remember how the phases go.
I don't remember either.
If I look back on the phases, my favorite was Shang-Chi, I would say by a pretty significant margin of the post-Endgame phase, because that was its own movie that had its own point of view, and it was very fun at doing it. But I look at things like Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and I think that was not an entirely successful movie, but it did what I think Ant-Man Quantumania could have done, which was pick a lane. Like that movie picked the goofy, cartoony, nothing has real consequences lane.
Yeah.
And at least it had an ethos, you know. Thor, honestly, I think Thor Love and Thunder is my least favorite of any of these movies. That one just irritated me from beginning to end. But this movie, I don't know, it's caught in between a bunch of different tones, and I think there's an identity crisis happening at Marvel, and I hope they snap out of it and give me fun by whatever definition they choose, but pick one definition. Don't pick like 8 definitions at the same time.
Yeah, Steven, half these characters got snapped into it. Like, they don't want to snap out of it.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, I may just see where it's going. I think probably part of my biggest disappointment with all these last few stories is I'm really into timey-wimey, dimension-y shit. And I feel like these films all playing in it and then not doing what I want them to do in it is what really hurts me the most. Where I'm like, it's right there. Just fucking show me that you know how to play in this space. And instead they have to do the same stuff.
It's kind of weird that other than Endgame, no one has really done the time angle as far as I know, even though that is the most obviously ripe for adventures and paradoxes and kind of fun, silly things. I feel like they're just like leaving money on the floor. I don't really know why they're not doing more with that.
Yeah. I mean, and to be fair, I kind of lump time stuff and dimension stuff sort of together in a way where you can do enough there and play in those areas that make it that make it fun, and you can do really, really interesting things too. With basically eventualities being different is the thing that I really, really like. Whether it's literal time travel or just what if there's a dimension where people made other choices than me or different choices, like that's really, really cool. And you should watch Loki. It's rad. It's really, really good.
But does it matter? That's what I'm wondering. Like all of these multiverse things makes me wonder if the plot matters at all.
So there is enough world building and loking for trouble. There's enough world building there that I think it stands on its own, even though it feels like it's introducing us to this whole bigger universe of stuff, and then these other films sort of just shit the bed as far as like continuing that forward. But I think on its own, it feels like a really, really interesting story that I thought was really, really fun, and I wholeheartedly recommend.
All right. So you're saying it's low-key great. I'll give it a try.
It's low-key great. But, Stephen, is it time for us to figure out if this film is low-key great?
Sure is.
All right. Stephen Miller, if you were going to give this a must-see, recommend with a caveat, wait for rental, pass with a caveat, or a must-avoid, what would you give it?
This is going to pass with a caveat for me. This movie, it was fine. And honestly, if this was a random little indie that came out of nowhere on a shoestring budget, I would be like, look, you didn't add up to a lot, but you entertained me. Wait for rental. You know, I would be kind to it, but it isn't that. This is the biggest thing in the world. This is like the creator of culture. And I just feel like the fact that minutes after leaving the theater, I had no thought in my head about the movie, but I had no feeling lingering about the movie is a bad sign for the franchise. So I feel like nothing was very consequential. It sounds like you could have met Kang without watching this movie, so I truly don't think this movie does anything.
Some people did meet Kang without watching this movie.
Exactly. So I guess go watch Loki instead, which I have on good authority is Loki great.
Yeah, I think as we've done this podcast, Marvel films have sort of broken the review scale for me. Like almost all the films come out as basically a recommend with a caveat, because they're either must-sees or they're recommends with a caveat. I think with this film, it feels inconsequential and it has to get knocked down to a wait for rental. It's something that like you will probably need to see eventually. But there is enough other stuff dealing with these characters that gets you most of the way there. That's far better than this. And I think that this film is something that you can sleep on a little bit. Maybe pop into the quantum realm for 30 years and then come back out and give it a watch. But yeah, unfortunately, this film did not. I don't know where I was going to go with it, but it just didn't quite get me there. So
yeah, the cat isn't alive or dead. The cat is just boring.
Yeah, that is true. All right, that is going to do it for this review of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Stephen Miller, if people want to find you throughout the week, where can they do that?
People can find me at twitter.com/sdavidmiller or sdavidmiller.com.
People can find me at ChristopherInRealLife.com or Twitter.com/ChristopherIRL. You can find the podcast over at thespoilerwarning.com, where you can get a bunch of the back episodes of the show. If you want to subscribe to the show, you can do so in Overcast, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, or wherever podcasts are found. If you want to know when the episodes go live, you can follow us at Twitter.com/SpoilerWarning, Facebook.com/TheSpoilerWarning, or Instagram.com/TheSpoilerWarning. If you want to get a hold of us directly, you can send an email to fans@thespoilerwarning.com, or you can use the contact form on our site. Music for this episode will come from a track selected from artlist.io, so hopefully you're enjoying that. And yeah, that's it for our Marvel talk. But we have one more trilogy to talk about. We're about to take off and go record a review of Magic Mike's Last Dance? Magic Mike's Last Dance. What the hell is this movie called?
Magic Mike's Last Dance.
All right, see you there, folks. Bye.
Bye.